we want to follow this story that we've been following. I say we, but Nate Morabito has been doing excellent work on this story for several years at this point, since 2022. So let me set you up here. So years after Charlotte City Manager pledged sweeping changes to ensure inclusivity with government contracting, our team discovered the city did not fully live up to one of those promises. Back in 2022, a Where's the Money investigation, the city excluded qualified small business owners and awarded more than $400,000 in government work to an uncertified talent coach who was friends with a top city executive. WCNC Charlotte's Nate Morabito is here in studio. You've been following up on this story. Fantastic work on this story. It's been 4 years since this initial story. Where are we now with this story?
Yeah, I mean, so the whole idea here is the city of Charlotte created a process, and it's a bit of a time-consuming process for minority, women, small business owners to try and get access to more government contracting work. And back in 2022, despite that process, they chose to do business with one specific talent coach who did not go through the process. And basically overlook everyone else to give this person more than $400,000. So as a result of our investigation in that aftermath, people were outraged. Small business owners were calling City Hall. They really were demanding change. And as a result of that, this is what the city manager sent to city council members. It was basically a list of things, sweeping changes he was going to enact, most of which they've done.
Yeah.
But one in particular, and I've been following up on this for years because I think it's really important that if somebody says something, we make sure they do it,
yeah.
Right? So one in particular was, the idea was that every single manager, there's hundreds of managers in the city, every single manager would receive annual inclusion training to understand the importance of this, to understand policy changes, to make sure that people were getting these kind of opportunities. And gosh, 2024, early 2024, I said, okay, show me proof that you all actually followed through on the training, as well as the other things. And they did provide that eventually. But initially, after a long wait, the idea was we never did that training. That's the response I got from the city. It took a long time to get to that point. But basically, they said that training never happened. And I was like, what? You all said you were going to do the training every year, right? And this doesn't make sense. Like, why would they have not done the training? So we started moving forward with a story to figure out what's going on here. Went back and forth just to be extra careful to make sure the training didn't happen. And that's when the city said, well, we actually did a training. And it just so happens the training was a month after I asked about it. This was February 2024. But this is early this year that I'm just now finding out about this, that there was some kind of training that did in fact happen at one point. And so I'm providing information. Hundreds of people are trained during this inclusion training. I'm provided a document of exactly what the training was. I believe that training happened, right? There were hundreds of people that were trained. But we find out, the minority of those people that were trained were managers. And when you do the math, fewer than 25% of all managers have been trained thus far to date. So we're kind of wondering why. And I think that before we go any further here, why does this even matter? We're talking about, in this case, this was pandemic era money.
Yeah.
Given for services paid for by the city, delivered by someone else. There are tons of small business owners out there who are struggling, who are still recovering from the pandemic.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure they are part of this conversation. Whenever there is government work, they want to have the opportunity to put their name in the hat. And the city has said that's what they want to. Here's what's at stake. Let's listen to LaPronda Span, who's a consultant. She helps businesses try to get government work.
It's a big deal because it could be life or death for a company. We saw what the pandemic did. Many people are still trying to recover even 5 years later, 3 years later from the pandemic. And it's important that many people can sustain not only the business, but their family, their households.
Now, LaPronda told me this is really important because most of what's going on here at the city, it's a people issue. And she believes people, managers, need to be trained and need to be retrained so that they're always prioritizing minority, women, and small business owners. I also, through my reporting, talked to Action NC Political Director Robert Dawkins, who is not shy of being critical of the city.
Oh, yeah.
And he will often say this to me and my investigative reporter friends in this market. If it weren't for you all asking these questions, the public would not get the information. And here's kind of what he says in this situation. It's frustrating to him.
The only way that we ever get any transparency is to have an investigative reporter go back and start an investigation. That's a serious process flaw.
All right, so we're putting this story together, and I got to give the city credit. We said we want to interview the city manager, and they said we can't really fit him into the schedule, but what about a deputy city manager? And we interviewed this deputy city manager, Sean Heath, a very candid conversation, said there really was no excuse for how long it took for this training to even occur. This took almost a year and a half after the city manager announced it to happen, and again, it just so happened after we asked for proof that all of a sudden they're going to do this training. And he also said this process was an evolution. They're comfortable with the fact that most managers weren't trained, and the reason is because they felt it would be better to only train the employees, manager or regular, who are involved in the government contracting procurement work. So you're going to hear from him tonight at 6 o'clock on WCNC Charlotte. You're going to hear more from Robert Dawkins. You're going to hear more from LeBron Despan. You can go to WCNC.com right now and read our full investigation. But it's such an important issue in our community, and this is something the city council has said that is a priority for them. And after our initial investigation, this was a big deal. The mayor said the city made a mistake. There was a lot of outcry to make sure that history wouldn't repeat itself. And people in the small business community believe this training is a critical role in making sure their government is held accountable to the promise they've made.
Just for I love talking to you about your stories because for me, I get a chance to see how the sausage is made. Followed up for years on this story. When did you get to the point you said, okay, now is a great time to get that update?
Yeah,
just for folks out there.
I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
right? And I'm always filing public records requests. I want to understand and be 100% certain before we put something on the news. And when the city said that the training never happened, and I pushed back, and they said it still never happened, I said, this is a story, I really gave them a lot of time to figure out what happened here.
Yeah.
And by the way, the city has gotten better with its public records requests. That's something that you request a public record, and they're supposed to give it to you in a reasonable amount of time. Well, for years, it's been a real struggle over there. And they've really made an emphasis on trying to be faster and more efficient in giving the public the records that we own. And in this case, it took way too long. Everyone admits it took too long to get the records to us. And so you get to the point where you're like, well, we're moving forward on the story, but I'm not going to just put a headline out there. I'm going to figure out actually what happened. And that was earlier this year when we started figuring out, well, maybe a training did happen. Maybe it wasn't exactly what they said was going to happen, but they found a training that occurred. We think it's important to tell the public because at the end of the day, the city manager runs the city. The city council is the city manager's boss. And this was a big topic at a city council meeting in 2022. And we really felt it was important. And the public deserved to understand that just because they say they're going to do something doesn't mean it's always going to happen in the way they say they're going to do it and in the time they say they're going to do it.
Nate Morabito, awesome work, per usual. Not surprised by that. You can catch Nate's story. It's up on our website now.
Right now, WCNC.com.
But you can catch them live 5:30 and 6:15. Nate, as always, thank you for stopping by, man.
Appreciate you all for the support. Thanks.
Let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.